It wasn't exactly shocking that Georgie reacted the way he did. To be fair, anyone who has watched the ups and downs of Georgie and Mandy's relationship could have predicted that this situation would set him off. At first, Georgie was genuinely proud of Mandy for getting the chance to cover the big meteor shower story. He encouraged her, supported her, and even seemed excited about the idea that she was finally getting a shot at doing something meaningful in her growing career. But the moment he learned that Scott, her ex, would also be part of the overnight assignment, everything changed instantly. Situations like this always seem to bring out the worst worries in people, and Georgie was no exception. Personally, I've never been fond of this particular type of storyline. The whole "I don't trust your ex" conflict tends to feel predictable, and there's a deeper issue behind it. If someone feels the need to police their partner's interactions with other people, especially exes, then it usually signals a deeper insecurity. As I've always believed, if you genuinely can't trust the person you're with to remain loyal in complicated situations, then maybe the relationship isn't as solid as it needs to be. And Mandy made an excellent point when she tried to explain this to Georgie. When he loudly insisted that he didn't trust Scott, he didn't seem to realize that what he was really saying, whether he meant to or not, was that he didn't trust her. Because what does it mean if he claims that Scott might try something, but also believes she wouldn't shut that down? There's an implied assumption there, and Mandy rightfully called him out on it. If you believe your partner is committed, then the presence of a former lover shouldn't be enough to send you into panic mode. Of course, there's another layer to this type of conflict that TV shows tend to gloss over. Georgie's worry assumes that anything that might happen between Mandy and Scott would be mutual, but real life is rarely that simple. Fortunately, Georgie and Mandy's first marriage is not the type of show that would dip into that darker territory. It's not that kind of drama, and it hopefully never will be. Still, the tension created by the mere presence of Scott was enough to shake Georgie's confidence, which already isn't the strongest. Now, Mandy wasn't completely blameless either. She didn't intentionally hide the fact that Scott was going on the assignment, but she also didn't volunteer that information right away. She clearly knew that Georgie wouldn't take it well, and instead of addressing it up front, she waited until he directly asked her. That hesitation, while understandable, made things worse in the long run. When someone feels blindsided, they tend to jump to conclusions, and that's exactly what happened with Georgie. As soon as he realized she had left out that detail, his imagination filled in all the worst-case scenarios, no matter how unreasonable. Predictably, this spiraled into Georgie losing his temper and trying to dictate what Mandy could or couldn't do. He acted as though he had the authority to veto her job assignment, which was not only misguided but deeply unfair. Mandy is working extremely hard to rebuild her career after years of upheaval, pregnancy, motherhood, losing her previous job, and essentially starting over. For Georgie to step in and attempt to control a professional opportunity she desperately needed was the last thing she deserved. And yes, it's important to remember the setting of the show. The timeline takes place in the 1990s. But even 30 years ago, women were already pushing against outdated expectations, and Mandy certainly has never been the type to let anyone, even someone she loves, limit her ambitions. Georgie doesn't always realize how fragile her career still is. A single missed opportunity could set her back months or even years. His insecurity could have cost her dearly. Interestingly, the situation took a turn that I didn't initially expect. When Scott casually mentioned that he could make other arrangements, I assumed the show was setting up the predictable storyline where he replaces Mandy with another reporter. That would have been frustrating, but also a standard familiar trope. Georgie interferes, ruins everything, Mandy finds out, and the couple argues over how he cost her the chance of a lifetime. But that isn't what happened at all. Instead of punishing Mandy because of Georgie's meddling, Scott remained surprisingly neutral. He didn't try to manipulate the situation or sabotage her assignment. When Mandy eventually discovered what Georgie had done, how he had secretly spoken to Scott behind her back, her anger wasn't about career sabotage. It was about the betrayal of trust. Georgie had inserted himself into her professional affairs without her knowledge, and then acted like he was entitled to make that decision. That was what hurt the most. To be honest, I couldn't blame Mandy for her fury. From her point of view, Georgie had stepped over a big line. He assumed he could control her workplace decisions, and worse, he did it secretly. For someone who values independence as fiercely as Mandy does, that felt like a slap in the face. Even if Georgie believed he was acting out of love or fear or protectiveness, it came across as controlling, and she wasn't going to tolerate that. Still, it could have been far worse. The fact that Scott didn't exploit the situation says something about him. Despite his complicated history with Mandy, he didn't turn into the stereotypical sneaky ex waiting to pounce on an opportunity to wedge himself between her and Georgie. At least not openly. That alone showed some maturity, or perhaps strategic patience, depending on how you read the situation. Because even though Scott behaved professionally, there's no denying that something about his involvement feels uneasy. And that leads into the bigger concern: Georgie might actually have reason to worry, whether or not he's consciously aware of it. Thank you for tuning to channel. Stay tuned for more videos on Bullseye movies.